The following is an excerpt from the Concise Yoga Vasista, Section 2, on the behavior of the seeker. Self-effort. In this world, whatever is gained only by self-effort. Where failure is encountered, it is seen that there has been slackness in effort. Self-effort is that mental, verbal, and physical action which is in accordance with the instructions of a holy person well versed in the Scriptures. It is only by such effort that Indra became king of heaven, that Brahma became the creator, and the other deities earned their place. Self-effort is of two categories, that of past births and that of this birth. The latter effectively counteracts the former. Fate is none other than self-effort of a past incarnation. There is constant conflict between these two in this incarnation, and that which is more powerful triumphs. Self-effort, which is not in accord with the Scriptures, is motivated by delusion. When there is obstruction in the fruition of self-effort, one should examine it to see if there is such deluded action, and if there is, it should be immediately corrected. There is no power greater than right action in the present. Hence, one should take recourse to self-effort, and one should overcome evil by good, and fate by present effort. The lazy man is worse than a donkey. One should never yield to laziness, but strive to attain liberation, seeing that life is ebbing away every moment. One should not revel in the filth known as sense pleasures. One who says, "Fate is directing me to do this," is brainless, and the goddess of fortune abandons him. By self-effort, acquire wisdom, and then realize that this self-effort is not without its own end, in the direct realization of the truth. If this dreadful source of evil, named laziness, is not found on earth, who will ever be illiterate and poor? It is because laziness is found on earth that people live the life of animals, miserable and poverty-stricken. As is the effort, so is the fruit. This is the meaning of self-effort, and it is also known as fate. When afflicted by suffering, people cry, "Alas, what tragedy!" or "Alas, look at my fate," both of which mean the same thing. What is called fate is nothing other than the action of self-effort of the past. The present is infinitely more potent than the past. They indeed are fools who are satisfied with the fruits of their past effort and do not engage themselves in self-effort now. Sometimes it happens that a farmer's efforts are made fruitless by a hailstorm. Surely the hailstorm's own power was greater than the farmer's effort, and the farmer should put forth greater effort now. He should not grieve over the inevitable loss. If such grief is justified, why should he not weep daily over the inevitability of death? The wise man should, of course, know what is capable of attainment by self-effort and what is not. It is ignorance to attribute all this to an outside agency, and to say that God sends me to heaven or to hell, or that an outside agency makes me do this or that. Such an ignorant person should be shunned. One should free oneself from likes and dislikes, and engage oneself in righteous self-effort, and reach the supreme truth, knowing that self-effort alone is another name for divine will. We only ridicule the fatalist. That alone is self-effort, which springs from right understanding, that manifests in one's heart, which has been exposed to the teachings of the Scriptures and the conduct of holy ones. One should, with a body free from illness and mind free from distress, pursue self-knowledge, so that he is not born again here. Such self-effort has a threefold root, and therefore threefold fruit: an inner awakening in the intelligence, a decision in the mind, and the physical action. Self-effort is based on these three: knowledge of Scriptures, instructions of the preceptor, and one's own effort. Fate does not enter here. He who desires salvation should divert the impure mind to pure endeavor by persistent effort. This is the very essence of all Scriptures. The tendencies brought forward from past incarnations are of two kinds: pure and impure. The pure ones lead you towards liberation, and the impure ones invite trouble. You are indeed consciousness itself, not inert physical matter. You are not impelled to action by anything other than yourself. You are free to strengthen the pure latent tendencies in preference to the impure ones. The holy ones emphasize: persistently tread the path that leads to the eternal good. And the wise seeker knows the fruit of my endeavors will be commensurate with the intensity of my self-effort, and neither fate nor God can ordain it otherwise. Such self-effort alone is responsible for whatever man gets here. When he is sunk in unhappiness, to console him, people suggest that it is his fate. This is obvious. One goes abroad, and one appeases one's hunger by undertaking a journey and by eating food, not on account of fate. No one has seen such a fate or a God, but everyone has experienced how an action, good or evil, leads to a result, good or evil. Right from one's childhood, one should endeavor to promote one's true good by a keen, intelligent study of the Scriptures, by having the company of the holy ones, and by right self-effort. Rama, this sage Vishwamitra, became a Brahma Rishi by self-effort. All of us have attained self-knowledge by self-effort alone. Renounce fatalism and apply yourself to self-effort. By self-effort, restrain the senses and the mind, and with a mind that is one-pointed, calmly listen to what I'm going to say. This narrative deals with liberation. Listening to it with other wise seekers, you will realize that Supreme Being in whom there is neither sorrow nor destruction. This was revealed to me by the Creator Brahma himself in a previous age. The omnipresent omniscience, the cosmic being, shines eternally in all beings. When a vibration arises in that cosmic being, Lord Vishnu is born, even as a wave arises when the surface of the ocean is agitated. From that Vishnu, Brahma the Creator was born. Brahma began to create the countless varieties of animate and inanimate, sentient and insentient beings in the universe. And the universe was as it was before the cosmic dissolution. The Creator saw that all living beings in the universe were subject to disease and death, to pain and suffering. In his heart there arose compassion, and he sought to lay down a path that might lead living beings away from all this. He instituted centers of pilgrimage and noble virtues like austerity, charity, truthfulness, and righteous conduct. But these were inadequate. They could bestow only temporary relief from suffering, and not final liberation from sorrow. In every age, the Creator wills into being several sages for the spiritual enlightenment of all. And in order to ensure the due performance of secular duties by all, Brahma also creates kings who rule justly and wisely over parts of the earth. These kings, however, are soon corrupted by lust for power and pleasure. Conflict of interests leads to war, which in turn gives rise to remorse. To remove their ignorance, the sages used to impart spiritual wisdom to them. In days of yore, kings used to receive this wisdom and cherish it. Hence, it was known as Raja Vidya, kingly science. As long as the highest wisdom does not dawn in the heart, the person revolves in this wheel of birth and death. This wisdom destroys the forest of ignorance. Roaming in this forest, one undergoes confusion and seemingly interminable sufferings. One should therefore approach an enlightened teacher, and by asking the right question, with the right attitude, elicit the teaching. It then becomes an integral part of one's being. Indeed, one should positively strive to enthrone wisdom in one's heart, for the mind is unsteady, like a monkey, and one should then avoid unwise company. There are 4 gatekeepers at the entrance to the realm of freedom, moksha. They are self-control, spirit of inquiry, contentment, and good company. The wise seeker should diligently cultivate the friendship of these, or at least one of them, with a pure heart and a receptive mind, and without the veil of doubt and the restlessness of the mind. Listen to the exposition of the nature and the means of liberation. For not until the Supreme Being is realized will the dreadful miseries of birth and death come to an end. If this deadly serpent known as ignorant life, is not overcome here and now, it gives rise to interminable suffering, not only in this, but in countless lifetimes to come. One cannot ignore this suffering, but one should overcome it by means of the wisdom that I shall impart to you. If you thus overcome this sorrow of repetitive history, you will live here on earth itself like a god, like Brahma or Vishnu. For when delusion is gone, and the truth is realized by means of inquiry into self-nature, when the mind is at peace, and the heart leaps to the supreme truth, when all the disturbing thought waves and the mind stuff have subsided, and there is unbroken flow of peace, and the heart is filled with the bliss of the Absolute, when thus the truth has been seen in the heart, then this very world becomes an abode of bliss. Such a person has nothing to acquire, nor anything to shun. He is untainted by the defects of life, untouched by its sorrow. He does not come into being nor go out, though he appears to come and go in the eyes of the beholder. Even religious duties are found to be unnecessary. He is not affected by the past tendencies which have lost their momentum. His mind has given up its restlessness, and he rests in the bliss that is his essential nature. Such bliss is possible only by self-knowledge, not by any other means. Hence, one should apply oneself constantly to self-knowledge. This alone is one's duty. He who disregards holy scriptures and holy men does not attain self-knowledge. Such foolishness is more harmful than all the illnesses that one is subject to in this world. One should devoutly listen to this scripture, which leads one to self-knowledge. He who obtains this scripture does not again fall into the blind well of ignorance. If you want to free yourself from the sorrow of repetitive history, receive the wholesome instructions of sages and be free. In order to cross this formidable ocean of repetitive history, one should resort to that which is eternal and unchanging. He alone is the best among men, whose mind rests in the eternal, and is therefore fully self-controlled and at peace. He sees that pleasure and pain chase and cancel each other, and in that wisdom there is self-control and peace. He who does not see this sleeps in a burning house. He who gains the wisdom of the eternal here is freed from repetitive history, and he is not born again in ignorance. The eternal is not attained by rites and rituals, by pilgrimages, or by wealth. It is to be attained only by the conquest of one's mind, by the cultivation of wisdom. Hence everyone should constantly seek the conquest of the mind and self-control, which are the fruits of wisdom. When the mind is at peace, pure, tranquil, free from delusion, untangled, and free from cravings, it does not long for anything, nor does it reject anything. This is self-control, or conquest of mind, one of the 4 gatekeepers to liberation. All that is good and auspicious flows from self-control. All evil is dispelled by self-control. No gain, no pleasures in this world or in heaven is comparable to the delight of self-control. The delight one experiences in the presence of the self-controlled is incomparable. Everyone spontaneously trusts him. None hates him. Self-control is the best remedy for all physical and mental ills. He who wears the armor of self-control is not harmed by sorrow. When there is self-control, even the food you eat tastes better. Otherwise, it tastes bitter. He who, even while hearing, touching, seeing, smelling, and tasting what is regarded as pleasant and unpleasant, is neither elated nor depressed. He is self-controlled. He who looks upon all beings with equal vision, having brought under control the sensations of pleasure and pain, is self-controlled. He who, though living amongst all, is unaffected by them, neither feels elated nor hates, is self-control. Inquiry, the second gatekeeper to liberation, should be undertaken by an intelligence that has been purified by a close study of the Scripture, and this inquiry should be unbroken. By such inquiry, the intelligence becomes keen and is able to realize the supreme. Hence, inquiry alone is the best remedy for the long-lasting illness known as repetitive history. The wise man regards strength, intellect, efficiency, and timely action as the fruits of inquiry. Indeed, kingdom, prosperity, and enjoyment, as well as final liberation, are the fruits of inquiry. The spirit of inquiry protects one from the calamities that befall the unthinking fool. When the mind has been rendered dull by the absence of inquiry, even the cool rays of the moon turn into deadly weapons, and the childish imagination throws up a goblin in every dark spot. The non-inquiring fool is really a storehouse of sorrow. It is the absence of inquiry that gives rise to actions that are harmful to oneself and to others, and to numerous psychosomatic illnesses. One should avoid the company of such unthinking people. They in whom the spirit of inquiry is ever awake illumine the world, enlighten all who come into contact with them, dispel the ghosts created by an ignorant mind, and realize the falsity of sense pleasures and their objects. In the light of inquiry there is realization of the eternal and unchanging reality. This is the supreme. With it one does not long for any other gain, nor does one spurn anything. He is free from delusion, attachment. He is not inactive, nor does he get drowned in action. He lives and functions in this world, and at the end of a natural lifespan, he reaches the blissful state of total freedom. What is inquiry? To inquire thus: who am I? How has this evil of repetitive history come into being? Is true inquiry. Knowledge of truth arises from such inquiry. From such knowledge there follows tranquility in oneself. And then there arises the supreme peace that passes understanding, and the ending of all sorrow. Inquiry is not reasoning, nor analysis. It is directly looking into oneself. Contentment is another gatekeeper to liberation. He who has quaffed the nectar of contentment does not relish craving for sense pleasures. No delight in this world is as sweet as contentment, which destroys all sins. What is contentment? To renounce all craving for what is not obtained unsought, and to be satisfied with what comes unsought, without being elated or depressed even by them. This is contentment. As long as one is not satisfied in the self, he will be subjected to sorrow. With the rise of contentment, the purity of one's heart blooms. The contented man who possesses nothing owns the world. Satsangha, company of wise, holy, and enlightened persons, is yet another gatekeeper to liberation. Satsangha enlarges one's intelligence and destroys one's ignorance and one's psychological distress. Whatever be the cost, however difficult it may be, whatever obstacles may stand in its way, satsangha should never be neglected, for satsangha alone is one's light on the path of life. Satsangha is indeed superior to all other forms of religious practices, like charity, austerity, pilgrimage, and the performance of religious rites. One should by every means in one's power adore and serve the holy men who have realized the truth, and in whose heart the darkness of ignorance has been dispelled. They, on the other hand, who treat such holy men disrespectfully, surely invite great suffering. These four, contentment, company of wise men, the spirit of inquiry, and self-control, are the four surest means by which they who are drowning in this ocean of repetitive history can be saved. Contentment is the supreme gain. Company of the wise is the best companion to the destination. The spirit of inquiry itself is the greatest wisdom, and self-control is supreme happiness. If you are unable to resort to all these four, then practice one. By diligent practice of one of these, the others will also be found in you. The highest wisdom will seek you of its own accord.